If tomorrow starts without me, there's something you should know. While I hold you close, never let you go.
Hello and welcome to The Broken Pack, a podcast focused on giving adult survivors of sibling loss a platform to share their stories and to be heard, something that many sibling loss survivors state that they never have had. Sibling loss is misunderstood. The Broken Pack exists to change that and to support survivors. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Dean. In today's episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Christopher Ban, an oral surgeon and Jeopardy winner, about the loss of his brother, Michael, to astrocytoma. We discuss anticipatory grief and mourning and continuing bonds that Chris has found with Michael. Take a listen.
Second guessing, 'cause you never know, you just never know.
Okay, so welcome to this episode, and I'll let you introduce yourself, Chris.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Chris Ban, and I live in Pittsburgh, and I'm an oral surgeon here in town.
All right. So is there anything else you want to say about yourself?
Obviously, I have a brother. We're both born and raised Pittsburgh, both fifth generation, both sides of our family. Obviously, I miss him a lot. I'm excited to talk about him. I'm glad you have this podcast put together. I was telling you right before we went on, I've binged every single one every season. And every single person, first of all, I think we really honored their brother or their sisters. And it's, as I'm probably about to find out, not too easy to come on here and talk about some of these things, but every single one, including yours, someone said something. I said, that is exactly how I have felt at one point or another during the whole, thing before he passed and since he passed.
Well, thank you for that feedback. Yeah. It's nice to know when putting these things out in the world that they are helpful.
It's very soothing. As weird as it sounds, hear someone else break down a little bit and sometimes cuss it out a little bit. I think a couple of people have. It's like, it's really therapeutic and soothing just to hear that and comforting. So,
yeah. Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So before we talk about losing Michael, what do you want our listeners and the world to know about him?
He was exceptional. Before he got sick, even after, pretty much could do anything he tried and set out to do. Some raw talent, and he passed from a brain tumor, which we'll get into. And that slowly takes away all of your faculties. It's sort of like, I described it was like a dimmer switch on one of the people you love most in the world, just slowly being turned down. He loses a little bit every week. But before that, he was an attorney. He was a supremely gifted athlete. He was a Division I rower in Georgetown. And he wasn't perfect. Nobody is, but he also had a really tender heart. And he was an artist, I think, at heart too, and a musician. Probably a lot of, maybe his friends and some of my family didn't even know that. But he was a really, not just gifted musician, but also it spoke to him in a way that I think speaks to artists.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like he was a very positive person. Do you want to say more about your relationship with him?
Sure, yeah. Gosh, he's like my first friend. I remember the day he was born, the oldest picture we have of us is he was probably not even a day old. I'm holding him in my lap. I was about just shy of 3 years old. And, when you're growing up, it's like the sun and the moon and your brother, like he's just there every day. And I've said to talking to my mom last week, I said, one of the things that bothers me is I don't have a lot of very specific like memories in narrative form that I can remember from while we were growing up. I remember, I know we played in the snow. I know we went to Kennywood, which for those of you not from Pittsburgh is the greatest amusement park in the world. And she said, well, he was just always there. So it wouldn't have stuck out. He was just there with you all the time. And so he was. When I went away to college, he was still in high school and he had just started, he was a freshman when I left. And when I came back in college, he had sort of kind of become a man. I mean, he was 17, 18 years old. I'd come back from a year abroad and he was just this really confident high school student who just graduated high up in his class and had wanted national and a couple of Midwest titles in rowing. He went into rowing because I was on a team, which I was his significantly less cool older brother, which he never let me know. I knew I was not as cool as him, but he never made me feel that, but he was super positive, always optimistic. When he was 2 years old, he actually got meningitis and almost died then. And I remember, that's a specific memory. I was probably 8. I don't know why he was just a real sensitive kid or something, but I got real worked up one night. I went in his room while I was sleeping. He said, "What is wrong?" He was like, he must have been 5 years old. I said, "You almost died." He said, "Yeah, I didn't." And it was the middle of the night. He spent his time cheering me up. But we really reconnected when I finished my surgery training. Well, when I went to dental school, he was in DC, I was in Boston, and I went down and visited him a bunch of times. And as adults, we really, not that we weren't close growing up, but we really saw eye to eye more. We were more peers. Because when you have a little brother and he's 3 years younger than you, you're in different stages of life at every point from like kindergarten through 12th grade, just because there's so much change that happens in your life growing up. But when we were both adults, we really got close the last, I'd say 10 years or so of his life. My best friend at that point. When I moved back to Pittsburgh the last 6 years, we hung out a lot.
It's interesting about the meningitis. So you had this memory of his fragility even then. I wonder how that carried through for you.
I guess it never really stuck with me that, hey, he's fragile in any way. I think my mom always felt that way. My grandmother passed away when my brother was 11 days old. And my mom always had this residual feeling that, she wasn't able to give him enough attention the first 5 or 6 months he was alive because of the grieving there. And so to him, he was always like a fragile kid, but he was bigger than me, stronger than me. You
said
party harder when
you.
he was in college than I ever considered. Yeah, to me, he wasn't ever fragile. He got away with everything too, but the younger brother always does.
Okay. I can't speak to that. So do you want to shift into the story of loss?
Yeah, sure. We can do that. Let's see. It was 2018, which we're recording this now. That was about a little over 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago or so. And he was coming home from work and he couldn't read his cell phone. He was reading ESPN or something on his cell phone and the words stopped making sense. So he called his friend and basically went straight to his house and they called my dad and they thought, he's having a stroke. And my dad said, get him to hospital right away. So his friend rushed him, ran every red light to Allegheny General Hospital here in town. I was out of town. I was actually with my now wife. She was my girlfriend at the time. And we were in Mexico and I got a phone call and my dad's not really good at hiding stuff. He was trying to emotionally not tell me, hey, something's wrong. You might want to come home. So I figured it out that they'd found a tumor in his brain. So he had a biopsy. I was in Mexico for maybe 48 hours and I had to navigate, get an emergency flight home, not really know what was going on. So I came back and he was diagnosed with astrocytoma, which is a stage 3 out of 4 brain cancer. And he was given, I think, 6 months or so. And he survived just under 4.5 years. So it was a long haul. He did radiation. He did chemo. Our family, everything just changes as soon as you get that diagnosis. And I knew he was not going to survive, like where we're going to be 90 years old, rocking chairs on the porch. I just knew. And so that's a long time to get ready. So we were pretty purposeful for those 4 years in the sense that, we never really said openly, hey, and I kind of regret this. I never said, are you scared? Are you ready to go? Do you know? And he had his own ways of telling that, which we can get into. But yeah, it was 4 really tough years. He was able to work at first, then he wasn't, then he was again. He was, like I said, a great athlete. And then he for a little bit, he couldn't even walk. And then he was able to walk again after his surgery where they removed part of the tumor. So that was hard. My mom, so we're pretty close. It's my mom and my dad and I and my brother. And she always says, she's like, you're taking his illness extremely hard. And it did affect him. He was phenomenal athlete. And to see him not even be able to run, not to be able to walk without help. And the last year in particular is pretty rough because the last few months he couldn't even talk actually. But that was very purposeful. My wife and I had a baby. It was didn't arrive till after he passed, but he was the first person I was able to tell. So I took him out to lunch. I still have the receipt in my email because it's all digital now. The receipt from the restaurant down in Pittsburgh I took him to, and I told him he couldn't talk, but you could tell he's real excited. And man, he just would have loved that kid. He would have been such a great uncle. There's a lot in there in 4 years. And I don't know what else your listeners want to hear about. Brain cancer is not pretty. It's a pretty awful way to see somebody go. Not that there's a good way to see somebody go slowly, but every day you just sort of lose a little bit. I remember him telling me, we were at lunch in Baltimore. I took him down to Hopkins to see if he could get an experimental treatment. I remember feeling at one point when it didn't occur to me until I took him down there. There was like, oh, no one will say this to us, but he's dying. And they don't have anything else to do. So we met with there's a doctor at Yale, at Hopkins. When I went to Hopkins, I could tell the guy knew my brother didn't have more than maybe a year or two, but there was no more medicine to try, no more surgery. And he just was like, just being nice until we left. But we went to lunch in Baltimore, which I was going to tell you. And he basically gave me the idea that he'd ever be able to have a kid. And that's the only time, growing up as close as we are, he never talked to me about like the girl he was dating, whether things are getting serious or not. It was the only time he like let his guard down with that sort of thing. I think that he and I guess they were married then, had said they weren't going to have kids unless he went into remission, which he wasn't going into remission. So yeah, there's a lot of hard memories, but there's some good ones too.
I'm curious about that amount of time. So you thought you had 6 months. So you went into this intensive anticipatory grief.
Right.
And then it was prolonged for another 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
It's exhausting. You start thinking, start having hope. Like maybe there's maybe all the papers are wrong. Maybe everybody else passed. Maybe he's just different. Maybe he's special. Maybe something's going on here. They can't be explained because he's basically after his surgery, he had no new symptoms, nothing for about 1.5 years. So when you hear 6 months and then he's just doing fine. And that was at a period of time when he went back to work. He was able to do like sports like golf and things like that, but we weren't going to go run like a 10-mile or he wasn't going to take up boxing or anything. Right. So it's hard. It was hard on my family. I remember saying, I feel like my family was just being put through a meat grinder because every day he'd need, my mom ended up being his primary caregiver. And it was like every day there was a little bit of drama, and then you get good medical news, get bad medical news. And it just becomes, the whole family just shuts down and lives every day with his test results and his treatments. And I started taking one day off every week to be with him. That was my day to take him to his physical therapy or his radiation. So at the end of it, looking back, I was emotionally just boxed up because I didn't want to add to the drama with what was going on with my family, and also exhausted. I feel guilty about this at the time, but when he passed, it was like there was a little bit of relief because I just didn't know. Every day is like, how can we do this for one more day? How can we hold this together? That was a really long answer to your question, but yeah, it was not easy. And it was emotionally exhausting. And I tried to be the steadying force in my family. And that was another role I played, and that was hard too. And I had to work. We'd done practice. I had to build a practice and start to support my small growing family. And so all that, there's a lot more pressure at the time that I think I was willing to admit I was under. I still never till the end considered that he would actually die, even though I knew he would. I was so shocked. It hit me.
Thank you for putting words to that relief, because I think sometimes people feel guilty for, you alluded to, you said you felt guilt. And I think we, as a society, feel like there are certain ways that we should feel.
Yeah.
And there's no way that you should feel. It sounds like, too, that he suffered so long that it would be natural to have some relief in his suffering ending.
Right.
And I think it is an interesting idea that you had mentioned, too, compared to a lot of the other guests or even myself. Like, I had no idea, right? But you had to get used to this idea that your brother, who was there the whole time, was not going to be in the rest of your life.
Right.
Where are you with that now?
It sneaks up on me. Generally, I can go about my day without it derailing me, but it'll sneak up on me when I'm thinking about, we have a baby now, he's 10 months old, and he'll never get to know Michael in the way I knew him, I guess, the best way to put it. It sucks because his first birthday is coming up. Mike won't be there. He was such a great uncle. So through my kid, who oddly enough has been like probably the best thing that could have happened in general. Yes. But like my mom and dad, that kid, that kid saved my mom when he was born. So it's hard in that regard. I still have my own relationship with him, which I'm learning what that means now that he's passed. And I go through times where I feel like he's there with me. I feel close with him, even though he's passed. And sometimes for a few days or even sometimes a couple weeks at a time, I just won't feel that closeness. Holiday, his birthday's on Monday. Today's being Friday for, depending on people are listening to this. And I'm working that day. And I started working. I worked to work 3 days after his funeral. His funeral was on a Saturday and I was working on a Tuesday because it was Memorial Day, I think was the Monday. So I just went back to work. And those days that I'd taken off that I was supposed to, Wednesdays were my day with him. I'd scheduled every Wednesday that summer. I resented having to go to work while he was alive. And then after he passed, I needed it. So I guess I'm okay in the sense that like I can go about my life. I can be a husband. I can be a father. I can be a son to my parents because I feel that's probably my most important role, I would say, after he passed, especially for the first half year. I actually carve out time to be sad. In particular, Friday mornings, my day driving into work, I have about a half-hour commute and I have a whole playlist of all his Spotify songs to listen to and a bunch of songs that are meaningful to us. And that's when I let myself listen to that playlist. Usually by the time I get to work, I'm a little bit of a mess. I pull it together before I walk in the door and start seeing patients. And so today was Friday. So I did that today.
Are there particular songs that you stay more connected to all of the time, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, there's a few stories behind some of the songs. When I was in college, I was having like a rough adjustment period to it. I think I was homesick or something. And my mom was telling me a story. This is obviously years ago. So I'm a piano player and I played at my grandpa's funeral. He passed 20 some years ago. And she was talking about to cheer up or something. Or I said, I missed Michael at that point. She said, when your brother, I asked him if he passed away ever, what he'd want you to play at his funeral. And he said, Rocket Man. So fast forward 20 years and that happens. And a few weeks before he passed, he couldn't talk. And the way that the tumor works in the brain, he really couldn't text either. But he sent a message to my mom with my name and then that little rocket emoji. She goes, what is this? And I said, I know exactly what that is. So I text him. I said, you want Rocket Man, right? At the funeral. I said, yes. So I did. So that's a hard one to listen to for me. But there's a lot of, he was a bassist. He played classical music and we listened to a lot of Beethoven together. We went to a bunch of symphony concerts with Beethoven. So I listened to a lot of the stuff that we saw, basically symphonies and piano concertos and stuff. But yeah, Rocket Man. Actually, there's another thing I wanted, not that I came with like points of things I wanted to say, but one of the things that is very hard is he had so many close, like really nice, funny friends. And sometimes it felt to me like he's been gone now for a year and a half. I feel, do they forget him? Like I never hear anything from them. Not that we're friends, but we have this charity fund at this charity that we're doing. And at first trying to get them to donate or participate. I was like, man, they don't even respond. They're saying, okay, I'll think about it or whatever. Hey, man, you guys like forget about him? So my parents went to a wedding that they were invited to of one of his friends. And that's all they were talking about was him. And all they were talking about was when Rocket Man comes on the radio, they all lose it because they were all at the funeral. So then the Jeopardy thing, which we can talk about. That was probably the biggest thing that's happened since he passed away.
I'd love to hear this story. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was on Jeopardy. I went through the tryouts or whatever. My wife and I would watch it. And she said, why don't you just try out because you're yelling out the answers. So I went on the show. And around about the same time, our high school has decided to build this boathouse and we were both on the rowing team, like I might have said earlier. And I said, man, that's got to be named after. We have to get this named after. I was thinking to myself. So I was going on the show and they do this interview thing on the show. If you watch Jeopardy, like tell a story about yourself for about, keep to 3 sentences. Don't go on and on forever. They asked, what do you want to do with the money? That was my question. What do you want to do with the money? I said, my brother Michael passed away and our high school is building a boathouse and I'd like to see if we can get it named after him. And I'll donate all the money I win on the show to the boathouse to get it named after him. So at that point, I was like negative $1,000 on the show. I was like way, way, way in last place. So like, we'll get a little bit of I don't know, people see the show and maybe people want to donate for this because I'm obviously not coming in with any money. On the second half of the game, I end up coming back. And then the final Jeopardy answer was, the answer to the question was Rudyard Kipling, like the Jungle.
Mm-hmm.
And when he had been sick, we watched The Jungle when we were growing up. We watched this Ricky Tikki Tavi cartoon.
Yeah. And
he said, when he got sick, he said, I want to get a picture commissioned from my apartment, someone to draw it or something, of a mongoose killing a snake. Cause that's me. I'm the mongoose. I'm going to kill this snake, which is the tumor to him. So I ended up getting that picture. He hung it in his bathroom every day. He was brushing his teeth. He saw it. And now I have it in my bathroom. Anyway, so fast forward, I finally come back. I'm like tied up in Final Jeopardy, and I was the only one that got the right answer. I think to be The Jungle Book was the answer. That was the craziest. I don't know what people believe out there, and I don't want to put my own beliefs out there too much, but I mean, I feel like he had a big hand in that moment. That was the closest I've had him feel to me. Maybe with the exception one of the other 2 times in the year since he passed.
Did you get the boathouse named after him? Or is that still a work in progress?
Yeah, that's how we started on this whole. So it's the fundraiser. There's having one for his birthday. They're having a fundraising dinner. And now his friends, a lot of them are coming. A lot of them saw that show. They were talking about the episode or whatever. So we've raised a pretty good amount of money. They're going to break ground hopefully next year. But yeah, the high school actually approached me and my parents because I kept asking them about, hey, can we name this after my brother? And they were like, we decided before you even talked to us to do it. We're going to surprise you at this fundraising dinner we're doing. Oh. So yeah, it's going to happen. It'll be the Michael Dan Memorial Boathouse, which is great. And
I assume you'll go to the opening.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can't wait. No, but I'm going to. They're doing this alumni race. And all these guys I rode with 22 years ago, which is the last time we were on a boat together. I'm sure a bunch of us have beer guts and we're going to get in the boat out on the water. And I don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully nobody drowns. But yeah, it's going to be ugly. But we're going to have an alumni race.
That should be fun.
So it might hurt real bad.
Yeah. So you had some time to get used to this idea of losing a sibling. Are there things that you wish you knew in that process that you don't know or that you didn't know then?
Yeah, one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't actually talk to him about whether he was scared or not of dying. I think I have my answer to that just from talking to him and the way he would act and some of the conversations he would bring up. Yeah, I wish I'd had that actual talk with him. What do you think happens after you die? What are you ready? That's one thing. The other thing is that there's not, like most people have said, most people ask, how are your parents doing? Nobody asked how I'm doing. I was never even aware that no one asked me how I was doing until I started listening to your podcast. I said, man, it would have been really nice if someone had been just focused on me as his sibling during that time, especially when he was sick, even before he passed. And I also wish, just honestly, that the doctors would have just said, hey, look, make sure you have meaningful moments. Make sure you, for him, close up shop the way you want to, so to speak. Because till the last 48 hours, I thought maybe there'll be some treatment. Maybe it'll be something. Maybe he'll start getting a little bit better with this steroid. And part of that's on me, but yeah.
What do you mean part of that's on you?
I was like him. I'm just blissfully optimistic, I guess. Just never say it's over till it's over. I don't know. That's not the best way to put it.
It's interesting to me that you as a medical professional, I think it highlights just how, we can't necessarily be objective in our own lives when we're in the helping profession.
It's true. It's changed the way that I talk with my patients about things. What I do, it's generally not matters of life and death and terminal illness, but it has changed the way that I present possible complications and I'm very realistic about prognosis. But when I say it's on me, I read every paper I could find on anaplastic astrocytoma, prognosis, resection margins, et cetera, et cetera. And then he started doing experimental treatment, which obviously isn't published yet. So I think that's where I hung I know that all this says this literature from 8 to 12 years ago that he's not going to make it. I just had hope. I had hope in every day that passed, even when things would happen, I still preserved it against my better judgment. But you don't want to be doom and gloom with him. There are conversations I probably avoided with him because I was just roads I didn't want to take him down in conversation. Maybe there's things I didn't want to hear. When he was a few months away from passing, he started asking me on a car ride we were taking. He said, hey, what do you want? What of my stuff do you want? And I said, what do you mean? I just want you to be around. I don't want any of your stuff. And the thrust of the conversation is he wanted to give me his nice watch he had. It was like his favorite possession. And I got real upset. Like, why are you saying this? And what I wish I had done instead was say, anything you want me to have, I'll be honored. Like, so I think he knew that I just wasn't ready to have that conversation at that point. I don't think he was upset. And I have his watch. I think he was getting ready. And I just wasn't ready to admit it myself.
Well, how could you? Right? Like, he was there most of your life. And he kept beating the odds for a period of time.
And I remember thinking, in these words even, I knew I was being dramatic in my own head. I told my wife, I feel like the world is ending. Like, nothing can go on after this. As we get down to the last few minutes with him, whenever that happens, I was terrified of that world after him. And it really was just like a bomb went off in our family afterwards. Not in the sense that there's all this collateral damage and that we weren't a family unit, because we were, but it was just quiet. It was like a mute over every conversation I had with my parents. We don't, it's not that we don't talk about it, but we only bring it up when we're at our weakest moments. It's tough. But yeah, it was a big quieting effect on our family dynamic, I guess.
Well, that makes sense, because the way you described, everyone changed the family dynamic when he had the diagnosis.
Yeah.
And everything had to revolve around making sure his care was provided.
Right.
For so long that when that was not there, how could you not feel that quietness? Plus his absence, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did your fear around that time match up with what happened?
There's my dread of what it was going to be like after he passed. No. And that was hard in and of itself, because it's like hard to see the world keep turning when it seems like for you, it just stood still. It's hard. And other people have their lives and things. I wasn't expecting the actual whole world to come to a stop, but no, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I feel bad that it's not that bad. I have guilt about that. Like, some of your other people that you've interviewed, they've had some really hard times. And I'm not saying I didn't have those, but I felt myself listening to some of these people that lost a sibling, and they're shut down for a while. And I honestly thought, like, why wasn't I like that? Why am I able to wake up, take care of things I need to take care of? What is wrong with me?
Well, it sounds like you threw yourself into work as a distraction.
Yeah.
And that your shutting down happened before he died.
Yeah, I think you're right. I remember when he passed, the last 36 hours, he was essentially in a coma at my parents' house. I was the one. People were asking, like, what would he want in this moment? Would he want to have whatever, this medical intervention done, this, that, or the other? And then when he's having trouble breathing in the last few hours, I was supporting his airway, like not losing it, not getting upset. Just, I think I have to see this through the right way. So, I don't know, posterity or something. And it's not a fun place to revisit, not just because it was him passing, but about myself. And I don't know. I don't know why in those moments I was able to stand up straight.
I think if you can have compassion for yourself to see that it goes up and down throughout time, like, you're still very early in grief, that some days you're going to be able to stand and some days it'll knock you over. I don't know if you found that to be true.
Yeah. I'm sure on Monday, when his birthday, when I get home from work, usually the baby's being put to bed. The day's kind of wrapping up around the house and it's quiet. And I'll probably go on a walk, and then I'll probably be on a walk for an hour or two, and that won't be okay in that time. And then by the time I get back to the house, I'll be right back at it. I don't know. You tell me, are people, I don't know if it's compartmentalization or what. I'm sure everyone's different that way. It's odd because I wish I wasn't able to do that, but I do. I just set aside the times to bottom out.
No, I think sometimes the grief is present in front of us. And I mean, it's never not present. But it might be in the background, and it's going to come back and forth. And so you learn to live with it. And so I hear that's what you're saying is, if I take this walk, I can be present with my grief, and then I have to be present for my son and my wife. And so, of course, the grief is still there, but it's how you're interacting with people that changes.
Yeah. And I look forward to, I guess it's weird, but just is like the grief time, like my Friday mornings, my nighttime walks, because that's my time to, I don't know, show him, man, I'm thinking about you. Like, I care. And can't do it 24 hours a day. with that kind of energy, but how I can. So that's how I manage. I wanted to say one other thing that you were asking, what I wish I'd known.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I'd known how wrong it is when people think you should be able to get over it.
Mm-hmm.
I was most recently, it's stupid. It was a movie review I was listening to of a movie called Rachel Getting Married. I don't know.
I have not heard of that.
Doesn't matter. But their little brother in that movie had passed away before the movie starts, before the plot of the movie. And the movie review was like, these people just can't get over it. Like, they're not ever going to be able to get over it. You're not.
Right.
I'm not going to get over it. I'm going to, if I live to 100, that's another 60 years. I'm not going to get over this. I don't expect to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you haven't had that kind of loss, and obviously when you're doing a movie review, it's not actually a person, but that's a prevailing belief. I think that you should just be able to get over it as a sibling, and I'm not going to.
Right.
I'm not planning on it.
Well, this is supposed to be the longest relationship of our lives.
Yeah.
And so
right
now you have to live more of your life, hopefully, than you had with him. And I don't mean hopefully as in that happens, but it's just the fact of the matter that hopefully you live to a long age.
Yeah. I'm not dreading those years without him in the way I was the first, I think, year out. I'm starting to, probably because of the baby, I wasn't depressed, but I also have this prevailing sense there's really nothing to look forward to. Mm-hmm. My parents are going to pass away at some point. I'm going to be the only one. We have a pretty small family. Most of the other people in my extended family have moved away to different cities, and it's going to be just me. And I love my in-laws, but they're not blood.
Right. You didn't grow up with them.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm starting to look forward to the years to come more. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like I was depressed. I just wasn't. I was like, man, I'm going to see this out, but the next few decades, really, it sucks.
Yeah. Did you find support from people in the time after he died?
There's that initial week or two. You almost have this euphoria because after 4.5 years of him slowly passing, you finally, all these people that he'd been talking to, you didn't know, come out of the woodwork, and you have this sort of, it really was at his funeral, like a little bit of a celebration of life. And term was probably overused, but it was. Everyone was sad, but we were all happy to be together. And there were so many stories. I mean, there were probably 1,000 people at his funeral, which for a young person's funeral, maybe that's not that uncommon, but you ride this high and then it all dies down. And yeah, like I said, it's just quiet. I don't know if I answered your question there. I'm sorry.
No, you did. Are there things that you've done that have been helpful?
Yes. So I talked a lot. I'm practicing Catholic, and actually my father-in-law is a Greek Orthodox priest. So I have built-in phone a friend for anything. Just the big questions I think you probably go through when you have a loss like that, when someone close passes. My wife, because she grew up in his household, she's been really understanding and patient. I think it's hard for a spouse to understand, but she does a pretty good job of that. And then other things I've done to help is his playlist. We had his cell phone, and I was able to go in and basically copy all of his liked Spotify songs to my phone, and it's 300 and some songs. So I haven't listened to all of them yet. I saved some of them. And so that, when I'm listening to music, it's goofy to say, but like he's part of the music. I feel like I'm like tapping into him when I'm listening to some really good music that he likes and some of the stuff we listen to together. So that's very helpful. And then obviously we put this memorial fund together and getting the boat house. It just gives me something active to do to think of like further my new relationship with him in its current capacity till I see him again. And then other than that, I've tried to stay close to my family. I talk to my parents every single day. I work with my dad. We're the two surgeons in the practice, but I talk to them and check in every day. My mom, I try to check in at least once a day. Sometimes I wonder if I'm annoying her. But I always say, how you doing today? It's fine. I'm fine. Why? So those things have been helpful.
Good. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before I ask my last question?
It's almost like all the other podcasts you've done, I could pull one or two lines from each of those and say, yes, that is exactly, you said it way better than I can ever say it. I'm not going to try to top anybody else came on before me because they've all said things that I've thought and probably much more articulate than me. But I would say if anybody's listening to this that has a sibling with a chronic illness, terminal illness, make the moments count. think about what you really want to know about them, because I don't get to ask him anymore certain questions about himself. And I think even though he's one of the closest people to me in my life, if not the closest, you still can't ever totally know anybody. So I don't beat myself up about it, but ask the questions and say the things that you want to say while you can.
I think that's fantastic advice.
Yeah, don't be afraid of it.
Before I do ask that last question about the memories.
Yeah.
Something else came to mind. So a lot of our guests have been women. A few of them have been men. And I know a lot of the other male guests have said it was hard to talk about. It was hard to get this support because of the gender norms and societal beliefs about men and crying and grief. What was your experience like with that?
I don't have a sister, and I don't know that I can think of that I'm close with anybody who was female that lost a sibling. I can't say that it was harder for me to get help, but I also know that not much is offered other than some very good friends. And by the way, I'm not blaming anybody for anything. I'm not upset at anybody, but other than a few texts here and there, that's pretty much it. Checking in. I'm not somebody that is afraid of talking about my feelings, people that I really trust, or even with a psychologist. That's not something that I feel any stigma about. But I also internalized a lot. And maybe I just had that expectation myself. But I would encourage any men or boys, depending on how old they are when their sibling passes, you know when you're really in a tough time, when he was sick and after he passed, you find out who the people are you can talk to. You find out who's in it with you and just talk to those people. And if you're down, try them out.
Yeah.
Worst case is they suck. They're not really your friend, So and they just sort of retreat quietly out of your life a little bit. And they take a step back, and then you know who they are too.
Right.
I guess I could have done that more, but the other issue for me is when you start to talk about it with people, you sort of lose your agency in when it's going to be talked about. Because the more you tell people, the more people you tell, the more chances you're going to be asked to talk about it. How you doing when you're like, hey, I'm good right now. I don't want to talk about it right now.
Kind of like your mom did with you on the phone, you said.
Yeah. I'm good right now. That's probably what it is. Yeah. But yeah, try out your people. Whoever your people are, you'll find out pretty quickly, and just lean on them a bit, because you'll do the same for them.
For sure. Well, thank you for all of that. Before we wrap up, do you have memories that you want to share?
So the one that as an adult is probably my favorite one, it always pops in my head, is we didn't fight a lot growing up, but every once in a while we would, and it would stand out. And it was always about something stupid. I can't remember what any of the fights were about. So this was probably like 2008 or something like that, 2009. I was back from dental school, and my brother he's a pretty curmudgeonly guy. He didn't care if he stirred the pot, rattled the cage, especially in within the family unit. So I don't remember what was going on, but he had started some kind of drama or other, and everyone's yelling at each other, and he and I just got in each other's faces and were screaming at each other about something. And we had Steelers playoff tickets for him and I to go to in 20 minutes. So we get in the car, we're going to it's Pittsburgh. We're going to go to the Steelers game. We're not going to not go, even though we're not talking to each other. So the whole drive down, not a word. I turn the radio, he goes, turn the radio off. I said, okay. So we just sit in silence. And we park and we go in the stadium, and we're still not talking. And the first quarter goes by, second quarter goes by halftime. I think I said, do you want to cook? He said, shut up. Okay. Which is him. And then I think the Steelers were losing or something, and they started to come back slowly. So it gets to be near the end of the game, fourth quarter, and they're coming back. And everyone's going bonkers in the stadium. And he and I, it all of a sudden made it okay. We gave us a big high five. We were hugging and tore on the terrible towels or whatever. The stadium's rocking. The flagpoles are because we were bouncing up and down so much, the flagpoles are waving and everything. And I think they ended up losing the game, but I just remember, so it was so ridiculous because over a span of 3 hours, we were at each other's throats over nothing. And then basically over pretty much nothing important. We were right back together as brothers, hugging and smiling. And the whole way back, it was the floodgates open. We were talking and laughing about whatever the heck it was we were fighting about. So yeah, that was a good one. And the other one is, I'd say that there's not a lot of specific like dialogues I can remember with him, but I remember I was on spring break from dental school. I was in Boston. I flew down. He was living in DC working for a government contractor. And I think I'd had a breakup with a girlfriend or something the night before. I don't remember what, but I was happy to get out of Boston for the weekend. And he picked me up in his car and windows were down, and he, last cranks it, Funeral for a Friend by Elton John, which is like the weirdest. Like he was into funk music, rap, all kinds of, I go, what? All right, man, this is great. You're like blowing my eardrums out with this. And I just knew he knew how to have fun. He was awesome at it. He had a great weekend planned. I just knew like this weekend, everything's gonna be great. I don't have to worry about anything. This is gonna be the best weekend of the year. And it was. And I always had fun hanging out with him. Those are two memories.
Well, thank you for that. And thanks for chatting today.
Of course. Thanks for what you're doing with this. I'm excited to keep binge listening.
Oh, well, thank you. And because you're in Pittsburgh, I have some in-person things that I'll let you know about.
Yeah, please. Sounds good.
Thank you so much for listening. Our theme song was written by Joe Mylward and Brian Dean and was performed by Joe Mylward. If you would like more information on The Broken Pack, go to our website, thebrokenpack.com. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter, Wild Grief, to learn about opportunities and receive exclusive information and grieving tips for subscribers. Information on that, our social media, and on our guests can be found in the show notes wherever you get your podcasts. Please follow, subscribe, and share. Thanks again.
You're second guessing, oh, you never know, you just never know.